If you don't do this, we're going to rape the women, we're going to beat up the old, we're going to crush the skulls of the old men, and then we're going to spear the babies. Or you can just say, okay, and agree with me.
And as it turns out, the governor of Harfleur immediately replies to King Henry, cool, come in, come in,
Cool.
we're
Cool.
we're good, I ain't bugging, cool, come in. And he basically, yeah, Henry takes the town. And a big hand for Edie as the governor of Harfleur in her stage debut, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Miss Edie.
Again, and again, the whole purpose of this is just so that you realize that it's not all lovey-dovey. I mean, it's actually very little of it. Shakespeare's plays were broken down into tragedies, Macbeth, Hamlet, kind of, comedies, Comedy of Errors, Taming of the Shrew, Measure for Measure. They're all very funny once you get through the language. And again, the language is accentuated by the person performing it. And when you see the performance of it, then you go, oh, that's what he's talking about. And it's like you were saying earlier, Shakespeare was not really meant to be read. It's meant to be performed and viewed. Reading Shakespeare, I know from experience, I didn't care for it. I didn't care for it. But in my senior English class, we watched Macbeth, Roman Polanski's Macbeth. And I was like, wow. I mean, and even all through high school, I was a huge drama geek. I was the drama nerd. I was the guy that stayed down in the drama, the weirdo who did the plays. But I had no interest in Shakespeare because I didn't get it. Because I was never told, oh, Shakespeare's supposed to be watched, not read. And so I had tried reading it, because we had read some of Shakespeare in the class, and I was like, I don't understand what they're talking about. But then I watched it, and I'm like, oh, you can almost hear the light bulb go, boom. And it changed everything. Watch it. There are very few, if any, of his plays that have not been turned into movies.
In fact, there's a new one. I was telling him the other night, I'm really excited about it. I've seen the trailer. There's a new one that is coming out this year of one of his romance plays that is not really performed that often. In fact, I've never seen it performed live. It's a play that Shakespeare wrote called Cymbeline. And they have now updated it to where it's taking place in a couple of warring drug families in upstate New York. Ed Harris, Ethan Hawke, Spencer Treat Clark, John Leguizamo. It's got a great cast. And I've seen the trailer for it. They've done a Sons of Anarchy take on there. You know, there's a lot of leather jackets and motorcycles in this. But when you hear them speak, they are speaking Shakespeare's Elizabethan verse, similar to what I did with Macbeth. A lot of times you see the setting transposed, and you guys have an awful lot, especially now with the internet and YouTube. You guys have an awful lot of resources available that I didn't have when I was your age, not necessarily, but you have.
We had to go to this building called the library.
Yeah.
That's where we got our stuff.
And instead of going with the complete 18-pound Globe illustrated edition, I personally found it easier. Get an individual copy of the play, and you can find these in used bookstores for 50 cents. And I've got a collection. I've got literally hundreds of these that I've collected over the years. Because one thing where we both differ, one area where we diverge rather, is that when I was your age, that was when I fell in love with Shakespeare. And by the time I had graduated high school, I had read all 37 of the plays. And I had intently studied them. And I do it still to this day. Now, I act in them, I've directed them, I participated in workshops. I'm teaching Shakespeare to kids at high school thespian conferences, doing things, classroom things like I'm doing right now. It's easy to start with an individual edition of a play. It's a lot easier to carry around. It's a lot smaller. But even if you can't find a film version of it, you can find an audio adaptation of it. This is John Gielgud and the Renaissance, Kenneth Branagh's Renaissance Theater Company doing King Lear.
I have a cassette tape of John Gielgud doing Hamlet.
Yeah, It's the complete play. It's on 3 CDs. What do? It's simple. You get yourself a copy of King Lear, you put the CD in the player, and you start. When you play the CD and you read along and you hear the actors acting it out, it all makes sense to you. Then you go find yourself a film version. And you don't even have to go out and buy CDs. Audio versions of Shakespeare's plays, they're all on YouTube. All 37 plays, audio versions, are on YouTube for free. Treat yourself. Make yourself available to use that resource. That's what it's there for. It's not there to substitute, but to supplement what you're already doing. And since you guys learned the prologue, I'll tell you a funny story. Romeo and Juliet was the first play that my brother ever did. My older brother was involved in theater long before I was. And in 1985, they did Romeo and Juliet at UNA. There was a guy named Dan Kane who played many roles in the show. But he did the prologue that you guys just recited. Well, they did morning performances for local high schools. And, you know, a bunch of high school kids, you've gone on a field trip, you're all rowdy, you're all talking, blah, 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 blah. Well, the high school kids would not be quiet. When the curtains opened, Dan, as the prologue, walked out to make his 2 houses speech. And there were jibber-jabbering kids. One in particular was in the front row. And he just would not stop talking. And get him what he's eating because she's closest. Dan Kane walks to the front of the stage because I was at this performance. You know that an actor is truly worth his salt when he can ad-lib Shakespeare. When he can make the stuff up. And he goes up right in front of the jibber-jabber on the front row who won't shut his mouth. And he says, "Young sir, saddle yon ass." And that kid went, huh? And then what you had, though, was 5 more minutes of everybody, of all the other kids in the theater going, "Ooh!" Young sir, saddle yon ass. That's how Shakespeare.
Did Tripstorm play?
Tripstorm was Tybalt.
Okay, I saw that one. I was one of the, probably, I might have been the kid that got
Now, we've been in situations before. The first Shakespeare that we ever did together was we both acted in Julius Caesar at UNA in 91, fall of 91. And we had a big malfunction one night. The ghost of Caesar appears to Brutus the night before the big battle, and Caesar tells him, "Oh, you're going to die," and all this stuff. Well, I was playing Brutus, and we had actually filmed the actor playing Caesar in this gory makeup, and they were going to show it as a film on a screen, and I was going to be acting with this film. Now, when it worked, oh man, it was great. It was cool, because when we shot it, this big Caesar head, bloody and gory, is up on this film screen, and I actually walk around in front of the film screen, and his head follows me as I go around this way. Well, the first night we had it, the film burned inside the projector. I was told that on the screen, it looked like Caesar's spirit burning in the pits of hell. This thing. So I'm sitting there in my cube. I've got a candle, because I've been reading my candlelight. And even in supernatural stuff, a lot of people say you can always tell a ghost is near. They'll mess with the lights and a candle will flicker. That's what signals the appearance of the ghost. Brutus is reading in his tent, and that candle keeps flickering. And Brutus has the line, "Methinks this taper," the candle, "methinks this taper burneth ill." There's something wrong with this candle. I'm using my peripheral vision. No ghost. And I'm sitting there going, okay, something has happened here. Cue the ghost. So I have to ad-lib Shakespeare. So I repeat the line and add a couple of adjectives to it. "Indeed, methinks this taper burneth very ill." No ghost. Finally, the actor who plays Caesar, by this point, Caesar's dead. He's already changed back into his leather jacket and is just hanging around backstage. They take the actor playing Caesar, "Get on stage!" and they throw him behind a curtain and bring up a light over him, and he actually did the lines live.
Said he was not expecting that.
So not only is that, you know, the wacky world of theater, but yeah, it does happen in Shakespeare as well there. What